Are you tired of the same old pro wrestling? Then check out the amazing action on Powerslam.tv, the biggest indie pro wrestling channel in the world. Get over 4,000 hours of the best pro wrestling events from over 110 of the biggest names in the industry from over 15 countries around the globe. Get your free trial today at Powerslam.tv.
The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Don't you want to sound rich?
Everybody, welcome to the 80th episode of Social Suplex's podcast about AEW with the proclivity for positivity. Welcome to All Things Elite is Jericho. My name is Austin Somewoods. I am your host of this lovely, lovely show. And joining with me, as always, is Floyd Johnson Jr., my good buddy. How you doing, man?
You just became a Judas in my mind.
Hey,
So,
but that's not a good thing though. Like, Judas is very much not a good thing, but like
man, that song is.
But it's just a good song, though. So it's like it makes the comparison completely worthwhile.
Like I said, the best thing in AEW to me is being in the arena live and singing along with Judas.
Oh yeah,
I love Cody, and I will sing. I know all the words to Kingdom, and I sing it every time he comes out. But when they stop that music and the whole crowd still singing along to Judas, like, I've had Judas stuck in my head for 3 days at one point, like, where I couldn't shake it. I'm just sitting there playing PlayStation. Judas in my mind, and I just start doing that, and it's like, see, I stopped because I didn't want to do it again, and it was like the mother of all earworms came from Judas. So
there's a true art too of having like a great crowd interaction of like people knowing every word and singing along, or people knowing every word to like say like the New Age Outlaws. Like, anytime you can get really good crowd participation, like, it's always so much fun to be a part of.
Yeah, and it started so naturally. I think. Yeah,
it just happened on the cruise. That's all that happened.
Yeah, and then once it started, it was like. It was it. It was like, once it started, that was the song. That was everything. So that's really it's really awesome. But I'm doing well. Football going on. I'm actually working overnights this weekend. So if you wonder why the show's a little later than usual, I have to adjust to my schedule, which is, I don't like it. It was like last night, I'd never have a problem working. I work like 60 to 80 hours a week at times, and it never bothers me. What bothered, and for some reason last night, I was starting to work, and I was just like, dude, I just don't want to be here.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yeah, we all have one of those days before.
Oh my God. So, Texas and OU, and another reason we're recording a little later is because Texas and OU were playing. So Texas was down 14 with like 5 minutes left, and they scored to tie the game. I say go for two, they didn't, whatever. So in overtime, last two overtimes, they exchanged touchdowns. Well, OU just stopped Texas, like the first stop in seriously like an hour. Like a real-time hour, first stop in real-time hour. So Texas is like, oh, I'm going to kick the field goal. Yep, we got blocked. So OU literally all they have to do is score.
It's like, geez, dude. Like I saw on the ESPN app, I just saw 3 overtime, and I'm just like, my God. Like I know a lot of people hate the NFL rule for overtimes and stuff, and how like there's ties in it and stuff like that. But I've watched European soccer, so ties and draws are like not uncommon to me. So I don't know. I'm just not used to it. But like, if there is a college game that's going that long, even if it's a team that I like, I'm just like, nope. I'll look at the results afterwards and I'll watch the final play. I can't deal with this long ass game.
Yeah, and we were supposed to record at, again, this is a little back, 4 o'clock Eastern time, and they were in overtime. I was like, give me 10 minutes. This game will be over. And then I just had to tap out because this game wasn't ever going to be over. So, yeah, I know everyone didn't didn't tune in to listen to me ramble on about college football. I just tell people in Oklahoma it's a religion. And,
yes.
I am a devout follower of said religion. So that's
Trust me, I've visited Georgia, and college football, to people means way more than NFL football a lot of times. It makes total sense as why it's a religion.
I mean, dude, I have, in being in Oklahoma, I've dated women that are bigger college football fans than me, and it's like they went to every game, and it's like,
yeah.
Can we have a date on the Saturday? You don't make dates on Saturday in the fall. You don't have weddings on Saturday in the fall. You just don't do it because no one's showing up, or if a lot of people are just sending gifts. Like, if you don't want actual people to show up at your wedding in Oklahoma, the best thing to do would be to just,
there you go.
To just have it on a Saturday during the fall because they're watching football. So, today we're recording Saturday, October 10th. And what's the big news of the day, Austin?
Before we get into the big news of the week, real quick, I got to shell the shit out of this. I want to make sure you guys are downloading this fine show on Google or Apple Podcasts. And also, if you listen to Spotify or if you listen to Google and Apple, be sure to share the podcast because we would really appreciate it. Please leave a rating and a review. And if you're so inclined, you can also leave a donation through our podcast provider, Red Circle. Please support us also by following us on social media. At AT Elite Pod is our Twitter for the show. At Social Suplex on Twitter as well. Myself, I'm at SZoomer4. And Floyd is at Floyd Johnson Jr. on Twitter. But as you were saying, Floyd, the big news of the week is the day that we're recording this, October 10th, is the one and only Tony Khan's birthday. It's honestly pretty huge day considering the guy is pretty much the biggest backer in the entire. He pretty much runs the show in terms of everything that AEW does. He's the guy. So big happy birthday to Tony Khan. I'm sorry your Jags aren't doing great, but you know what? Gardner Minshew is looking way better than he did before. So, but happy birthday, Tony Khan. Thank you genuinely for help making this dream of another amazing wrestling company on cable television a reality, because truly a lot of fans didn't think we'd see the day, but the Khan family really helped make this a reality. And despite the unbelievable popularity financially, I don't think AEW would be here if it wasn't for the Khan family. So happy birthday, Tony.
It comes down to Tony Khan was the dream because we were all wrestling fans talking online, Reddit and all that stuff. I mean, not me really. I was like, all this stuff I'm discovering over the last few years, but a lot of my friends were listening to Voices of Wrestling Flagship. They had the conversation. What if a person like a wrestling mark had access to billions of dollars and was actually, a pretty good businessman? You know what? That's what Tony Khan answered the question to. And the answer is fucking awesome wrestling. That's what you get. That's what I've enjoyed by AEW. It's just when you see him, and he might be in the background, all that stuff. He might be stressed, sweating bullets or whatever. But when you see him, he just looks like one of us enjoying wrestling.
Yeah,
and that's awesome.
Yeah, it's true. That's the thing too. Is when I had the chance to talk to Cody once, the one thing I made very clear about Tony Khan when he came out and he thanked everybody for coming to the show and everything. I was just when we went to All Out, it was just the fact that he seemed so genuine as showing his love of professional wrestling. It wasn't just another business venture opportunity. This is something that he's wanted to do, and it's very clear to see that. So, and it makes it seem way more genuine, and that's the one thing that AEW has shown to be genuine for the most part, and like Tony Khan is a great example of that as well. So yeah, amazing. Happy birthday to Tony Khan. Hope you're doing well. And now we can get into AEW Dynamite for this week. The 30 years of the Demo God Le Champion Chris Jericho celebration episode. Real quick before we get into the show, though, because I know we're going to be talking about something else in terms of our favorite memories, because next week is going to be the anniversary episode of AEW Dynamite. But since it's Jericho's 30 years in pro wrestling, might as well just go ahead and just, before we get into the show, like, what are our favorite moments of Chris Jericho's illustrious career? I'll let Floyd go ahead real quick. I know there's a lot to choose from, and I put you on the spot a little bit, but I do think there's so much to pull from this guy's career, and it's like so much of it is quality.
I would love to do a top 5 on this. I would love to really sit down and do a top 5, but I'm going to just think. First of all, the one that really made me a fan of Jericho in WCW is his feud with Dean Malenko. And talking about, I mean, the best way I can describe it is talking about his father being passed away. Obviously, it wouldn't have happened if Dean Malenko didn't say it was okay, and he was just, and I think that was one of the first list of Jericho, because that was the first list of Jericho. He was the man of 1,004 holds. And every other hold was an armbar. And it was so it's yeah, I loved it. I was a big fan of that. That was the one that made me a fan. But the moment was when the countdown clock came on, and it was like for WWE, and The Rock was in the ring, and it said 3, 2, 1, and then break the walls down. You had like, and then it was Chris Jericho, and you went freaking nuts.
Oh yeah,
Chris Jericho.
Because when his music hit, no one really knew what to expect, and then they just saw the words Jericho appear on the Titantron, and the place came unglued.
And you have to be honest when you look at yourself, when you think about wrestling, and you think about, you know, like a lot of wrestlers are smaller now, right? It really started with Chris Jericho. I mean,
well, him and that whole cruiserweight division in WCW like really brought out the smaller guys on like popular pro wrestling.
Yeah, because like Eddie Guerrero ended up being world champion, Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio. Oh, but you know, before then, to be world champion, you had to look like The Rock, Stone Cold, Triple H, even Mick Foley, The Undertaker, Kane. Just going through the list. Chris Jericho was a smaller dude, and you sitting there watching him talk crap with The Rock, but his charisma and everything, you know, completely made you ignore that, and the fact that WWE did just treat him like a heavyweight. It wasn't him stepping up in the division, and so his stuff, intercontinental stuff, his stuff with China, you know, he was like intergender wrestling, you know, the way Jericho did it, you didn't even think about it, you know, it was just like you just went along with it. And these are WWE. Let me give you a couple AEW ones. All Out, when I was there when he became the AEW champion, that was really cool. And then one moment that I wasn't there for, but it was freaking awesome, is the Jericho Cruise. The fact that he created a wrestling cruise, tried to give it to WWE, and they turned it down. They turned the wrestling cruise down, and then he made it what it was. It's pretty awesome. And then with the first time you heard people with the music off singing Judas, it was just like, his career, 30 years, like I said, I would love to do a top 5 list. I would probably need 10. Because even though I can honestly say Jericho was never my favorite wrestler, I always respected him as one of the best wrestlers.
Yeah, and for me personally too, like I've made it no secret, I got into professional wrestling in 2009. So by the time I got into wrestling, Jericho was very much his stone face, like, you parasites, I'm the best in the world at what I do. And then just a couple months later, he started teaming with the Big Show. But for me, like, one of the first genuine moments I experienced with Chris Jericho was his interaction with Bob Barker on Raw, which I saw that and I was dying. And that showed me that, like, not only is this guy talented as hell, but, I mean, he's funny as hell as well. Because I went back and watched a lot of his older stuff, like when he was the first ever undisputed world champion, and just saw the stuff that he did in WCW. And I was just like, how, like, normally wrestlers have one or the other. How do you have both? That's unbelievable. And then, of course, one of my all-time favorites, honestly, like, and it's newer, but the Festival of Friendship. Like, oh my God, did that segment just one of the best of
and
all
it only
time,
worked because of Jericho.
It only, well, no, and also, like, no disrespect to KO, he did a hell of a job with that segment as well. But Jericho, just the way that he carried the segment along and the way that he finished it off was just perfect.
I just want to add, if you think about that segment, just like you take Jericho out of it, that segment sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I'm describing to you the segment, you're like, why the hell would they be doing that? But Jericho, his energy, his charisma, his Jericho-ness made it work. He makes ridiculous things work. And it's just, yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where, you know, you look at WWE, any company, and they'll try to do stuff like this, and you're like, oh God, that's so stupid. And you put your hand over your head, why am I a wrestling fan? But then you think about it, Jericho would make it work. That exact same thing, you put Jericho in, it would end up working.
Yeah, and also, in terms of AEW stuff, just the fact that he showed up at the pep rally was one of the hugest things, like, in terms of, like, really just setting the world on fire. The moment that they were like, oh, AEW got Chris Jericho, and he's going to be one of their top guys. Okay, now everyone pays attention. Because when people were saying that AEW, like Jericho would say, AEW doesn't exist without me. In a sense, he's kind of right, though. There's a real good sense of truth of that, which is what makes the best bad guys, is when they're speaking a little bit of truth. Because the people who were looking on the outside, who were, like, maybe not so familiar with the Elite, maybe not so familiar with guys from New Japan or guys from Ring of Honor or yada, 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 once Jericho shows up, okay, now we'll pay attention. Like,
you need a Hogan. You need a Hogan in your company. It's funny because I always talk about, you know, like Hulk Hogan, personal side, you know. But you look at it, WWF, how did it start? With Vince acquiring Hulk Hogan. WCW, when did they become real? When Vince acquired Hulk Hogan. You know, it was like you need that big name, that draw, that superstar that can get people in the building. AEW, as much as the Elite were great and Cody was great, they were more insider baseball. They were more for the hardcore baseball fan. I mean, hardcore wrestling fans. They were more like, I could be wearing you wear a Bullet Club shirt and you go up to one guy in the mall and you too sweet. And, you know, the rest of the people are like, what the hell are these people doing? Right? But Jericho was the guy, you talk about wrestling. Oh, Jericho? He was such a legend. He has crossed over into pop culture, you know, with Fozzy, he's literally does a podcast. He's on Kevin Smith's podcast all the time. He is just so famous, and the world knows who he is. He was the name that was going to draw people that maybe didn't watch professional wrestling back in AEW.
Yeah, and like you said too, seeing him win the AEW championship and becoming the first champion live was also a huge moment. But like we've just rattled a bunch of memories off of Jericho's long, illustrious career, and I'm sure we missed so many. But off the top of my head, those are the memories that I remember with Jericho. And like, I mean, just the fact that we've barely even scratched the surface just shows how important of a figure Chris Jericho is in professional wrestling. And again, like if I rattled off my favorites, like again, like maybe like Jericho would be in the top 10 for sure, but he wouldn't be like my personal favorite, but the amount of respect and admiration I have for the guy, like to be around that long and to evolve the way that he did and continuously draw is something I haven't seen like at all. Like, I think because wrestlers have been able to change up their character before, but like I haven't seen a guy in my lifetime who has drawn and created new personas in his career for over 30 years.
And never changed his name.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
Nothing. I mean, Jericho has been Jericho. He's one of the people signed with WWE, kept his name, went all these other places, was in a Wrestle Kingdom match. It's like there's very few things that Jericho in his career hasn't done. And, when he first left for Fozzy, like the first time he left for Fozzy, I thought he was done wrestling. And then he's started basically a whole new other career, and he's doing exactly what the old veterans are supposed to do. He's putting over young talent. He's giving them the rub. He's so he's so about doing what is right in wrestling.
And giving back, yeah. And so, like, nothing but respect and love for Jericho. Thank you so much for all the incredible moments you've given us over the past 30 years. Like, yeah, you're 100% one of a kind, and wrestling wouldn't be the same without Jericho, guaranteed. But getting into AEW Dynamite, the actual show, we opened up with the FTW Championship being defended for the first time ever at AEW. The Machine Brian Cage, with Taz on a commentary along with Ricky Starks, defends against Will Hobbs. And these guys are just massive dudes. And, like, I knew Will Hobbs was big when I saw him show up. Did not think he was that big. My God. They're, like, his spine buster, like, is super strong. I think that he does really well with that. And the match itself, I loved how Brian Cage was, like, truly struggling at one point. And eventually Hobbs ducked a discus lariat. He hit the Last Will and Testament spinebuster on Cage, and then he went for literally all it took was a missed frog splash for Brian Cage to get the drill claw for the pin. So Will Hobbs had like Brian Cage running for a while, and it was a really strong opening match. And then right after the match, Taz gets on the mic, Ricky Starks gets in the ring, gives Hobbs two options. Either A, you be part of Team Taz, or B, you say no to option A, and Starks and Cage beats the hell out of you. So he asks him what it's going to be. Darby Allin's music hits. He comes to with his skateboard into the ring, and Ricky Starks and Brian Cage leave, and Taz then screams that Darby will live to regret it. Once again, Darby is not done with Ricky Starks or Team Taz, continuing that feud as well. And again, I really like this opener. I thought Will Hobbs looked super good. Like, as somebody who hasn't seen a ton of him, he looks really, really good.
Yeah, I thought this is my favorite thing. I talk about it on other shows. Big men slapping meat. I just like when two big guys get out there. If I think about it, like big Will Hobbs is kind of like 80s big. Former football player who's just a naturally big dude, right? And then Brian Cage is like bodybuilder big, you know what I mean? But the things that Brian Cage can do with, the standing shooting stars and the athleticism he brings is pretty crazy. The things Will Hobbs can do as far as just being big, tall, and athletic is pretty crazy also. I just thought this was a really good match. I thought it told a perfect story that Will Hobbs is big and he's strong, but Brian Cage is on that second level. So even though he hit him with that finisher, he kicked out. It was like Will Hobbs had that moment where I don't know what to do. Like, no one's gotten up from that move, And again, that builds into his being young to talent, because I always say every wrestler has a finisher and a fatality. The finisher is what generally wins. Like with Cody, it's the crossroads. But his fatality, when he's really trying to take somebody out, he'll bust out the vertebreaker or the 187, or I think he calls it the Dim's Fire, whatever. The Dim's Fire. That's when hey, my finisher didn't work. I need to try something else. Yeah, so Hobbs doesn't have that yet. So he goes on top rope, something he hadn't done all match, and he's like, I'm going to do a frog splash because I really need to take him out. The veteran Brian Cage moves out the way, takes advantage of his mistake, and then gets the pin. I mean, that's a wrestling story as old as wrestling. You know, the young guy, his playbook wasn't full. So, and then the aftermatch, for a half a second, I thought Will Hobbs was going to jump Darby Allin and join Team Taz. That still might happen. I've always had this gimmick that I would use, and if I was a wrestler, anyone in wrestling, I would overuse the shit out of it. I like to get a big guy in like a Wardlow role. I like him to wear a suit. His job is to protect Taz. You still build him up on Dark, just beating other people for a long time, and then as he gets better, he's like, okay, well, it's my turn. You've pushed Brian Cage, he can't get over the hump or whatever. It's my turn. I'm your star, and that's what sets up the feud, and he can either turn heel on Brian Cage or, become a face or whatever he's going to do. But it's a storyline I've seen so many times or thought about so many times that I figure it would work with Hobbs, or he could stick with Darby Allin. It's a motley crew of wrestlers, because it's like, what do Will Hobbs and Darby Allin have in common? Why are they tagging up? But hey, that's the fun thing about wrestling. You get people that wouldn't tag up normally tagging up. But overall, I thought this was a hot segment to start the show. A very good segment to start the show. I thought Will Hobbs, he has a lot of potential, and I got a few people telling me he's missing something, but I'm like, yeah, but he's not supposed to be the world champion tomorrow. This is a long-term project, and my most important thing is African American singles wrestlers being featured on the show. A common and a large, complaint from even people inside the AEW fan base seems to be being addressed.
Yeah, and honestly, like, Will Hobbs is one of those guys that I think was long overdue to be picked up by either WWE or AEW. And I do agree, diversity in your roster is even disregarding what's current issues or whatever you want to if you want to it really isn't a political issue. Just having a diverse roster of different characters that look different, act different in a show, in a movie, or in a wrestling company always offers better matchups, always offers a more entertaining product. So I agree. That's one of those things that I always thought, in the back of my head, I'm like, they should probably address this. And now that they seem to be doing that, I applaud them. I think they should continue to do that and continue to find athletes that don't look like somebody that we're used to seeing and continue to push them. And I think that's always a thing that you should continue to do, because that's how you make new stars. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, all throughout the night in the Jericho Celebration show for his 30 years, we had multiple montages of celebrities congratulating Jericho on his career, offering their favorite memories, and there was a lot of people that showed up. They had Slash, Jericho's dad, Ted Irvine. We had people from AEW talking about it. We had Gabriel Iglesias, who was also apparently on a Zoom call with Chavo Guerrero, which, sure, why not? But the only one that people seem to really pique their interest in, and the only one that people seem to remember anymore, Hiroshi Tanahashi, who offered his congratulations. So the instant he showed up, now all of a sudden people are starting to clamor about, are AEW going to continue to do stuff with New Japan? I feel like it's safe to say that was just a simple cameo and it's nothing more. But I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense why he showed up and congratulated him. But to think that New Japan are just instantaneously going to start working with AEW just because Hiroshi Tanahashi showed up once, and also just as a small celebration cameo for one guy, I don't think that's something to be I mean, it would be amazing, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, let me say, I could see Tanahashi doing something with AEW and then not opening the door. Because Tanahashi's Tanahashi. he can do what he wants. You know, Tanahashi in New Japan is like Jericho in AEW. I mean, Tanahashi helped put New Japan back to where it is right now. So he has earned a certain amount of flexibility that other people would not have. But I don't know if the door is open. I've been guessing that the door was going to open since the day AEW opened. And I had been fantasy booking matches with Okada because I know he's close with the Bucks. And Ibushi because he's close with Kenny. And then the Bullet Club was all a thing. So I was like, man, maybe Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa show up. And that's a thing that happens. But it's never happened. So it not happening, all I can say is, you know, wait and see. And I think it's one of those, I'm not trying to pass the buck or not pay attention. What I'm really focusing on is the moment. Like, the moment the door is open. If we stop guessing when the moment is, man, it's going to hit so much bigger when that door is open. Most casual fans won't get it, and they won't understand why we're going freaking nuts. But good Lord, it's just like Hiroshi Tanahashi. Like, I've admittedly never been a fan of Hiroshi Tanahashi. I always say he's like a person that started watching wrestling when John Cena was like in his 10th year. Mm-hmm. You look at John Cena and he's wearing the colorful shorts and the jorts, and you know he's kind of trying to look like
every week.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, this is stupid. But if you started off with John Cena, you understand that each part of John Cena has piece of him has been built over a multiple amount of years to make John Cena John Cena. That's the whole thing with Hiroshi Tanahashi. It's like, I didn't see the building blocks, and the end product just kind of seems like a hobbled old guy, you know? But to all those people that began with Hiroshi Tanahashi, it's like, oh, God, he's the greatest storyteller in wrestling. And I'm just like, okay, cool.
He's the ace for a reason.
Yeah, he's the ace for a reason, but I didn't see him become the ace. I was just told he was the ace. After a lot of years.
And when you haven't seen it unfold, that's just with any wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, if you haven't seen the full story unfold, you're not going to get attached to it like most do.
Yeah, so, but understanding how big that would be for AEW. I mean, their whole goal has been, we're going to acknowledge that other wrestling exists. We're going to work with other companies. They did it with the NWA, and it seemed to work out. Thunder Rosa, I think, has more eyes on her than she ever would have had before. And I think, you know, Hiroshi Tanahashi, as far as New Japan running shows in America, which they had an American expansion before COVID hit, you know, more people would know who Hiroshi Tanahashi is.
I'm almost certain too that once like everything starts to calm down, they're going to continue to push for their American expansion that they were originally planning for, because they were going hardcore, and you know that because they had a Madison Square Garden show. So if that doesn't tell you how much New Japan wants to get over in the States, like, nothing will.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to get over everywhere because it's more money. But NJPW world, getting people to sign on, getting people to learn it. I'm like, I very rarely met a person who has started watching New Japan Wrestling and is like, okay, I'm never watching it again. Generally, when you give it a shot and you like professional wrestling, you realize that it is, you know, it's the 5-course meal. It is the expensive steak place that's like $100 a plate. That's what New Japan is when it comes to pro wrestling. It is about it's about the sport of professional wrestling. You know, America, you know, is Chili's. You know what I mean? American wrestling a lot of times is Chili's.
Yeah, or Applebee's.
Or Applebee's. I put them on the same level. Hey, for me, good food. You know what I mean? But you know what? It's not going to change your life most of the time. So I just think I just think that's where we're at. Doors cracked open. I don't think it's open, but there's a crack. You can see the light on the other side of the door. I mean, if you got something funky in your room, it's kind of letting that smell out because the door's cracked. But
there's always a chance.
It's not fully open yet.
Yeah, there's always a chance. It's just not right now. Though maybe eventually that talks will happen again, but as of right now, I don't think it'll happen. But getting back into the show, everybody get ready. Floyd's going to gush. It's the Brush with Greatness 20-minute time limit match for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. FTR versus TH2, Angelico and Jack Evans. Now, I will mention in this match real quick, I loved the work that they did on Jack Evans and how Jack Evans was selling his left leg the entire match. There was a moment where there was a botch in him trying to jump off the top rope to the point where he got up to the second rope. But in a sense, it kind of worked just because of the story they were telling with his leg. But it was very clearly a botch because he went up to do it again pretty much on the second rope. But overall, still, for this match, solid tag team title match. And other than the fact that they literally brutalized Jack Evans and just took Angelico out of the match and just targeted Jack Evans instantaneously, FTR won this match clean, and that's a huge moment. Bucks were watching the match on the monitor at one point, just completely like their backs turned and only had their necks like facing to the side. It was the weirdest way I've ever seen somebody watch wrestling TV in a very long time. And then after the match was over, they super kicked a cameraman and then was going to pay him for the damages, but they didn't have their wallets on them. But FTR retains the titles in convincing fashion, and they're going to continue to keep an eye on when this match ends up happening. But then afterwards, pictures of actually, real quick, before we talk about what happened afterwards, Floyd, your thoughts on the match itself?
Okay, match itself. I'm a big fan of TH2. Jack Evans doesn't have bones. I'm convinced of that. The things he can do with his body is crazy. Angelico has this very interesting cocky look. I've always, like, the first time I watched him wrestle, I was like, dude, I'm a fan of this dude. He just has this fluidity in how he moves. And this was going to be interesting contrast because Angelico really wrestles a style that FTR would be amenable to because he's a lot of technical wrestling, submissions, and all that kind of stuff. And Jack Evans is more of the high flying. He is more of the, contrasting styles. So that's why I've always liked TH2 because, again, they're very much a hybrid tag team. I thought this match was good, classic tag team match. FTR. And I love that it was a heel versus heel match. Nobody really worked a face in it, and FTR gets the win. I love that TH2 was featured in this show. I know I generally go off on FTR being the greatest tag team ever, how they allowed them to rush to greatness. TH2 is one of those teams I will make the exception for because I feel like they should have been featured on Dynamite more. But of course, it's a 2-hour show with a huge roster. Everybody can't be featured. If you check out Jack Evans' Twitter, he's like, I've never had a better boss. I've never been treated as well as I ever have in professional wrestling except for Tony Khan. He'll defend the fact that he's not on Dynamite every week. And that's what you find with the roster that I've noticed is that they will defend not being on TV. You know how people like every other company, it feels like, oh, give me some more time, give me more of this. AEW was like, we understand where we're at. We have 2 hours of live TV every week. There's no way everybody can be featured. I mean, it would be like 11 2-minute matches or whatever, and that's not getting anybody over. They are really, focused on the wrestling. I thought, dedicating basically 20 minutes to tag team wrestling every week. Oh my God, you don't understand. This is Floyd, and then you have the best tag team in the world, FTR, doing what he does and letting everybody understand what real tag team wrestling looks like, and just keep winning and winning, undefeated, still undefeated. It was great. It was great to see, and the finish. Oh my God! Shout out to '90s tag team. Paul Roma and Hercules Hernandez. They did. They were called Power and Glory, and they in the '90s this was considered super high flying. Hercules Hernandez would do a superplex, and Paul Roma would jump off with a splash. And the way they did it back then, a lot of times they would do it simultaneously. Like Hercules would start jumping off the top, would start going for the super suplex, and Paul Roma would already be in the air for the splash. And the timing and the execution, it was like, this is beautiful. FTR paying homage to a great tag team. Well, they weren't a great tag team. To a tag team before, a well-known tag team. Like, if you had talked to tag team people, they're always going to bring up Power and Glory. They got the 3 with it. They didn't even have to use the Shatter Machine. They didn't have to use the Mind Breaker. They just, they hit the Power and Glory. And it is a finisher, and it's an awesome finisher. So, shout out to them. I would have said this, personally, with Animal dying last week, I would have liked to see a Doomsday Device at some point during the show. One of the greatest tag teams of all time. I would have saw. But if you talk to FTR, they are Midnight Express. They are Midnight Express. They are Midnight Express, Brain Busters. They love the Steiners. Power and Glory, they've done that move a few times. So it's just like, I never hear them really talking about the Road Warriors. So that might have been the thing. They might not just been Road Warriors guys, but but I would have loved to see that.
I think it'll be pretty reasonable to think that at some point a team, and in any wrestling company, like just a team, will do the do that move just to pay homage to Animal and just pay homage to the Road Warriors. So I think somewhere in wrestling there'll be a team that pays homage to the Road Warriors. But after the match and after the Bucks super kick to cameraman, on screen there was a picture of FTR dressed up as hot dogs, and Best Friends come out with t-shirts of that and just went as Comedy Backyard Wrestlers that you guys claim that we are. What we're trying to say is that you guys are weenies. Continuing to go on with that. But we're not joking when we say we're number 1 contenders and we're facing you next week in the anniversary show for the titles. So next week, Best Friends get their shot against FTR. And the fact that they continue to push that and also use the picture that very much, I don't think they were meaning to make fun of what WWE were dressing up the Revival to be like in their last year or so of being in the company, but it looked very similar just because it looked just as ridiculous. But I love how Best Friends are very much, they know how ridiculous they are and they're leaning into it so much. But at the same time, I think when they face FTR, they're going to tear the freaking house down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. The weenie shirts will never be purchased in my house, and if anyone I know buys that shirt, we're not friends anymore.
Oh, it's okay. I'll send you one, man. I actually, I know I missed the fall sale, but you know what? I'll grab one for you though. Since you've been so cool to me.
Nope. I will disown you. This shirt
on you. Dishonor on your cow.
This shirt does not represent the thoughts and feelings. This is not positive. It is calling the greatest tag team in the world weenies. The fact that that's over and that it's a thing, I have to tip my hat to Best Friends. I just that's silly, but hey, whatever. But yeah, and they got it on a shirt. Pro Wrestling Tees, man. I've been told not to put them over because they don't sponsor the show, but I freaking love that place, man. I was like 40% of my wardrobe comes from there. How do I not talk about them? Yeah, I was like,
Now after this, we had a small video package of MJF offering his tribute to Jericho, and that would pay in later on in the show, just talking about how he was inspired by him. But then the TNT Championship, the Exalted One, Mr. Brodie Lee versus Cody in a dog collar match. Now this, I really want to get Floyd's thoughts on this match first, because I think he'll just explain the intricacies of this match and how it got its point across better than I can. So Floyd.
Okay. So first of all, shout out to AEW. Again, this is the what word am I looking for? What's the greatness of having a former Mark as your owner is that while doing this dog collar match, Greg Valentine is in the crowd.
The Hammer!
From the person that was in the most famous dog collar match in history. And that, to me, as old guy, warmed my heart, even though I'm not. I always say I'm old. I'm only 39. To some people, that might be old. Some people, it's not. I always say, because to me, when I was your age, Austin, 40 was old to me. It's like, dude, you're 40? It's like 40? And it's like, so I always say I'm old, because I do remember being that. I remember being younger and thinking, oh, God, I'm going to have everything together. My life is going to be perfect when I turn 40. I mean, it's not far from it, but whatever. That's beside the point. But when we look at the match, you start that, then you just got how violent it started, and using the chains, and they even got creative with, pulling each other back and forth. It was literally like, and like, this is the line. You cannot run, you cannot hide, you gotta fight. Cody hitting John Silver busted him open like immediately, and then the whole things with Anna Jay pulling him back. I can honestly say I love Cody's presentations of matches. I do. Love it. Always have. I love the Attitude Big era, Big Phil, when you got all the run-ins and stuff. I can honestly say in this particular match, this one instance, I think the story would have been told better with nothing on the outside.
Okay.
Because what is Arn coaching you in a dog collar match?
I agree, yeah. But the spot, though...
No, it was pretty. I mean, I'm not saying it was bad. I was just saying, for the gravitas of the moment, I would have left everybody in the back.
I will say, though, the spot of Mr. Brodie Lee throwing a chair at Arn Anderson.
Yeah.
It's a good spot, too, because, like, it was just the most despicable thing you could do, and Jim Ross was just... He was just taken aback of how, like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Anytime that JR is, like, visually and, like, audibly offended at what a heel wrestler has done, like, you did a good spot.
Yeah, and the word, it's thrown around in wrestling very often. And, you can't describe it, you don't know what it is. If the person's your favorite wrestler, you think they have it, it's very much a subjective term until someone like really, really gets over. Like Orange Cassidy, when first time I saw him, I was like, that dude has it. But it wasn't proven until, he got over. Anna Jay is like the female definition of it.
Yeah.
When she shows up, it's just like, you look at her. Like, if she's in the ring, I don't care who else is in the ring, you're at least glancing over at her. And it's like, even with Brandy there, and Brandy, it looks like Brandy. Just like the best way I can say it. And there's not a lot of times that Brandy's in a room or in the ring that your eyes aren't on Brandy. Anna Jay takes your attention away. In this match, it was like, when she was working with John Silver, all that stuff, I just wanted to give a shout out to her because I just think she has that it thing. I think barring injury, barring any major screw-ups in her booking, she is going to be a player in wrestling for a very, very long time.
I agree.
And, but yeah, the match, so physical. The punches, the clotheslines. He hit a crossroads and Brodie Lee kicked out at 1. Because he actually did the same thing on the Paradigm Shift with, that Jon Moxley did. So they stuck with the fact that it takes more than your finisher to beat him, and then he hits the moves of Cody, and Cody kept kicking out. And then, Cody hits the Den's fire, and he tries to go to the top ropes and get yanked off. There's so many moments from this match. But, Cody's bleeding, and then, but the end, the wrapping the chain around his face, and just, choking him out, punching him, finally hits the crossroads and gets the 3. And it's just like, he didn't beat Brodie Lee. He survived Brodie Lee. I know Moxley used that word later, but it was the same type of experience. Cody was the better man this night, and it took a chain and wrapped it around his Brodie Lee's neck to get the pin and get to become the TNT champion. But good Lord, a warrior, a war. And then, we're just looking at the match, and I just want to talk about the match right now, not the promo after. It was just a physical intel and take and violence that it was. It's something you won't see on TV and very often, and I commend the guys. They put in a workman's effort. You don't get this on cable. You don't get this on a weekly show. And, they announced it as the main event. Chris Jericho and his match was the special attractive, but this was the main event, and they really did treat it like a main event. It was like after this match was over, it was like almost overtime into the rest of the show.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the appearance of... I'm glad that they limited the people in the Dark Order that came out, because if it was just the entire Dark Order, I agree, it would have detracted from the match. Having just John Silver and Anna Jay, and then John Silver eventually just gets completely dismembered and then just has to be carried to the back by Anna Jay. I think, having just them in the ring would probably make it seem a lot bigger. Arn always comes to the ring, and again, that spot with Arn and John Silver and Brodie Lee was just too good. I just love that spot so much. But I do especially, and someone pointed this out, and I don't remember who, but I do love the fact that in this dog collar match, in an era where a lot of times weird extreme rules or no holds barred gimmick matches can just be death matches and just have explosions and barbed wire and tacks and all this kind of stuff. The only other weapons other than the dog collar used was a chair and a table. That was it.
Yeah.
It was just two guys that were attached to each other, and they were just going to use what they had, and they just demolish each other. And
that pile driver through the table.
Exactly.
Man.
Yeah, it's just two guys, and they're tied together, and it's just their hate. And that's what's pushing the physicality and the violence in the match. You don't need all these other extra props to make it more violent. What you're putting on in the story and what you're putting on between these two characters just lock together and they can't escape each other. That's all the violence you need. Yeah, the table spot was great, and I love that they included it. Having a chair involved too was fine too. It's like in a match like this, a chair spot is always fine. But for the most part, it was just the dog collar and the chain. So I commend them for keeping it it's weird to say, a dog collar match relatively simple in what it needed to be. That worked so much better for it, I think.
Absolutely. I completely agree with everything you just said. No arguments from me. It's just, it was it was an old school wrestling match done a new school style. It wasn't they didn't both have crimson mask. You didn't have to turn your kid away, but they still got the violence over that needed to get over. And, Cody won, and I don't know if I would have had Cody win. And that's the big thing with me, is most people don't realize this. It's I watch wrestling like a TV show. I have my favorite characters, but I don't necessarily need my character to win every time. You know what I mean? Cody's my favorite character on AEW. He's my favorite wrestler in AEW. I don't need him to win every time. If it works with his storyline or not, I don't know where they're going from now. So him winning might work very well. They might do a rubber match at Full Gear, because they are 1-1 right now. I mean, I don't know what you can do to top what I just saw, but they are 1-1 right now. So they might do that going forward. It might lead to a mixed tag match with Cody and Brandi versus Anna Jay and Anna Jay and Brodie Lee. And I don't know where it's going, but I like where it is. And then now we can talk about the promo. I feel like the promo was weird to me, because it was passionate. It was everything Cody is in every promo, right? But he did some stuff, and I'm going to point him out. He said, I will never turn my back on you. It's people thought I should go heel. I will never turn my back on you. Okay. Got to throw this out here. Anytime in wrestling, when people use the word never, what generally happens very soon after that?
They break that never.
Exactly. So it's like,
as somebody who's seen Cody Rhodes heel as well in the past, like, I'm sorry, Cody, I love you. I don't buy that for a fucking second.
I prefer Cody heel. I've always preferred Cody heel. I think he's better as a heel. I think, when he gets to that last match and loses, I think he does more to get the person over as a heel, even though I think he does a great job as a face. But I'm just saying, I'm just pointing it out there with the black hair and all that stuff, and bringing back from the previous tag team match, or not previous tag team match, end of the night. We'll talk about that later. You'll see another thing where people seem to be getting closer, and it's just like, okay, so maybe something happens there. And Brandy is a heel. She'll tell you all the time. She prefers being a heel. She thinks it matches her natural personality, even though she's like one of the nicest humans ever. But she likes, being a heel. But I pointed that out in there. And then he just had a dog collar match. I'm about letting wrestling breathe. I've always been like that. You just had this violent dog collar match where you just said, you said the week before people aren't going to come out and they're not going to be changed. They're going to be changed. And, they're not going to come out the same. Blah, blah, blah. That's great. Why are you booking a match the next week, though?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's just because it's the anniversary show.
I know it's the anniversary show, but he could come out and just cut a fire promo on the anniversary show, and it would be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, you're not letting the match breathe. There's supposed to be consequences to this match. If I'm in a dog, he could possibly show up in the next match. Yeah, I know he shouldn't be wrestling. It's just like it was back in the WWE days where they do a ladder match and they'd say these people's bodies were broken, and then they'd be booked then they'd be booked in a tag team match later in the day. I just think it's silly. I will generally let Cody get away with murder. I just think it's weird. You're not letting the match breathe. And you need something for the 21st anyway, right?
Yeah.
Why not do this? Why not do the OC match? Because that's who comes down to is Orange Cassidy. It's like, yeah, like I said, let it breathe. Let it matter. Come and taped up ribs and all that stuff next week. Like, man, that hit me. But, and I was going to say this. The only way this can be fixed to me is if he loses to Orange Cassidy.
Yeah, if that's like him just being too confident in himself and then all of a sudden Orange Cassidy pulls up a mega upset.
Yeah, that's the only way this works. Because now you're still getting over the fact
that you're not the same.
That you're not the same, that the match took a toll on you. That beat up Cody can't beat up, a full 100% Orange Cassidy. That makes sense. That will put Orange Cassidy over. We'll see until next week. It's just, like I said, it's one of those things that you have to see. I was also confused why Orange Cassidy is getting a title shot literally 2 weeks after he already lost his last TNT Championship match.
Yep. Now, we have a promo in between these next couple matches. We had 3 more names announced for the AEW World Championship Tournament that I'm going to make sure I get this right. If the people that have already been announced for the tournament was do I have the full names actually? Well, the names that were announced, the people that have already been announced right now was Kenny Omega, Jungle Boy, and Rey Fenix. And tonight it was revealed that other people that will be taking part are Wardlow, Boom Boom Colt Cabana, and Hangman Adam Page. So with that name being announced, Alex Marvez was interviewing Kenny Omega backstage. He was relishing in the fact that he was back as a singles wrestler, and this tournament was where he was going to stake his claim for the AEW World title. He was unbelievably confident. He's talking about how in his experience with tournaments, many times he comes out on top. Sometimes he'll take a part in a tournament in his first time ever. He'll win the whole thing. Obviously alluding to the G1 Climax, which he has alluded to in the past before. But then Marvez points out about it and then about how he's very confident. And then Kenny Omega says it doesn't matter who he throws at him, even if it's Hangman with even if it's a cowboy, even if it's a former tag team wrestler who wants to get involved in this singles competition, it doesn't matter. He is going to win the whole thing. So Kenny Omega is very much feeling himself. And honestly, like, if this tournament doesn't end with Hangman versus Kenny, I don't know what on earth we're doing here, but I feel like that's where we're going. And honestly, fucking yes. Like, just like, if the whole reason for this tournament being what it is to have Kenny and Hangman face off is all I'm asking for. Like, please, God, the way these guys have just continued to, like, these two guys have been like one of my favorite character things that have been happening in AEW. So I'm like all for this whole tournament itself. And plus, like, I'm like catching up on the G1 too. I'm just in full tournament mode right now. So, like, yes, more of this, please.
I absolutely agree. That's where it's going, but I'm looking forward to the matches that get us there. I think that's so cool because you got to think it's going to start on the 21st. You looking at it, there is the 21st, the 28th, and the 4th. So if you think about it, you probably, like, there's going to be 8 people in it. That's 4-match first round. So maybe you get 2 matches, you get 4 matches on the 21st, 2 matches on the 28th, and then the finals are on the 7th. If you think about it, that'll start happening on the 21st. So I'm looking forward to it. Everybody that has listed can work really, really well. I like the idea of Colt Cabana being in there, and I do also like the idea of, he wants it was kind of like the Dark Order wanted him. And now it's like he wants to be in the Dark Order. You know what I mean? Now that Brodie doesn't want him, it's kind of reversed. So I'm waiting to see the pairings. There was a memo sent out by Hangman Page this week. Hangman Page this week on Twitter, and it was hilarious. I am going to tell everybody you should watch it. Some of the highlights. He says, as a child, one of the bullet points, because this was dictated by AEW. As a child, Hangman Adam Page, then in parentheses, unintelligible, the voicemail devolved into a slurred monologue with the occasional yell, followed by 2 minutes silence.
It's worth a read for sure.
Yeah, and the only other one I'm gonna put in, Hangman thinks that the AEW World Championship is the best looking championship, even more detailed and shiny than the tag team championships. It would look cool as Hangman's big ass belt buckle. So you should go to Hangman Page Twitter and read the memo. But it was hilarious because he does, in every sense of the term of this page, sound like a jilted girlfriend.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
or boyfriend, whatever. It just sounds like somebody.
Myself.
Yeah, it just sounds like somebody has gotten their heart broken.
Yes, and he's drowning in alcohol, as we can all very much see. But after this, we had pretty much just a breather match in number 2 ranked Big Soul facing Serena Deeb. I love both these girls. This match was very much put in place to just kind of just transition into the final match of the show. It was fun. It was a decent match, I think. Nothing was really wrong with it.
I will always say this. The thing about AEW's women match placement, it's like the worst.
It's not great.
I feel like this should have been before the Cody match, but you just came off the emotional high of 2 men beating the crap out of each other to change. You tried to break it up with, a few interviews, but then you go to the women's match. I honestly, I wouldn't want any match that means anything to try to follow what you just watched.
It's just too difficult. Honestly.
Yeah, it seems like it should have been like a squash match, like Wardlow came out and just like threw somebody around
Serena
for a minute.
didn't get an entrance.
Yeah. It was like Wardlow came out and threw somebody around for a minute and then had the women's match, but it just felt like such an afterthought.
Yeah, it's like it was there to just be the breather in between the 2 matches, and then also so they can plug heels.
I've been very honest about that. I just like the women's match placement. Everybody can improve on something. that might be something they can improve on.
We then had one last video segment of the world champion Jon Moxley sitting at a bar talking about Lance Archer, and when they face off on October 14th next week, he said, "Maybe you win, maybe I win. I got a lot of regrets in my life, but laying down in the ring for you ain't one of them. It's like you say, Lance, everybody dies." So quick little promo to build up to the AEW title match next week. But then, final match of the show, 30 years in the making, Chaos Project, Serpentico and Luther versus Chris Jericho and Jake Hager. We all know why this match was here. It was to celebrate Chris Jericho's career, and it was very much Jericho just wrestling pretty much one of his friends in the industry that he's known for the longest time. They met in 1991, Excalibur mentioned, and they just had a nice little celebration match that capped off with a nice little closing segment that was just really, really funny. But I mean, I don't really have much to say about it. The match was good and it was fine. It was just really there just to be like, guys, Chris Jericho's amazing. This is his moment to just have a fun time.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people bitching about Luther, and I'm just like, sometimes
people don't like Luther. Just it's like they have their belief about Luther and they just don't like him. Sometimes
things is what it is. Jericho's 30 years anniversary. This was the Jericho show. He gets to pick his opponent, dude. This is probably the last time Luther will ever be in a main event on an AEW Dynamite. And the fact that he gets this one shot should not bother you. I mean, I don't like to tell...
or at least shouldn't bother you this much.
Yeah, and I don't like to tell people how they should feel about things, because that's not really my business. But this shouldn't bother you. This was not a competitive, a number one contenders type match. This literally was nothing, really. They gave Luther and Serpentico a few wins on Dark to build up the record, to have a main event with one of his closest friends for 30 years on his anniversary show.
Yeah.
I'm just like, the dude's a wrestler. He has wrestled for years. It's not like, he's a janitor or something like that. Or, it's just like, this is a wrestler. And he got his spotlight. He got his one night. I'm like, this is why I love professional wrestling. It was like, I know it ain't Kofi Kingston, but it's just like, dude, to him, this was him winning the world title at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
He main evented a live TV show in America.
Yeah.
With one of his closest friends.
Alongside one of his close friends in Jericho.
Yes. And putting over Serpentico, because I think they did a good job of that.
Yeah.
And they gave him a lot of highlights, and, Serpentico probably wouldn't have main evented if he wasn't tagging with Luther. So he gave his boy the rub. I just the match was what it was. Was it the most beautiful match ever? No. But was it horrible? No. By no means was this a horrible match. I've seen worse matches on Dynamite. So it was a match, and Jericho won clean over. It was to set up what happened after, which, I don't know. I just if you had that big a problem with Luther in the main event, I want to...
You just have a personal gripe about it, and you need to sort that out.
Yeah, I just want to ask you about, do you find things happy? Because I don't think there's anything not positive about him getting the main event of Dynamite. It literally makes me happy for him. I don't know him. Didn't know who he was before he showed up in AEW, but he got the main event AEW Dynamite. Probably his last time being on Dynamite, unless they do a battle royal or something. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. But afterwards, MJF came out like he said he would. He brought a couple presents, one of which was a clown, and the clown was holding another gift. That gift was a framed photo of MJF, and then Jericho smashed that framed photo over the clown's head and hit it with the Judas effect, which was pretty damn stiff. Told MJF he hates clowns and if you better not interrupt me again. They stare off, and then they were just like, ha! And just all joking. They all smiled. Everybody came out like a full-on SNL celebration final screen. They cut to credits, which is just every credit is Chris Jericho, and that popped me. I thought that was really funny. The only other thing that was said was that MJF has a career-defining announcement that he will be making next week, which will be one of the previews for next week's Dynamite. But otherwise, Jericho's 30 years in wrestling. Hell yeah.
The only thing I can add from this segment is there was this moment where The Rock was in the Nation of Domination, and The Rock gave everyone presents on the Nation. Gave like Mark Henry a Rolex, gave D'Lo something, and then gave Farouk. Do you remember what he gave him? I don't know if you went back and watched this.
I haven't watched it recently, no.
He gave him a framed picture of himself.
Oh, yeah, he did do that, yeah.
Just saying. The announcement of him taking... Like, someone brought up the idea of MJF literally taking over the Inner Circle, and with that moment, it feels like it is foreshadowing to exactly that.
I mean, that would be really clever, too, and just a nice little parallel.
Yeah, because, The Rock basically tried to take over. Yeah, but Jericho and MJF, I feel like this is a feud they've been building up for a few weeks, and it's going to be fun. And the best thing is, Jericho's at this point where a face run in AEW wouldn't be the worst thing, because he already has the Judas thing going on. And it's just like he's already kind of cheered and treated like a face by the fans. So MJF going after a legend could be crazy.
Oh, yeah. And that was the episode of Dynamite for this week, the 30 Years of Jericho episode, the celebration. And it was a really strong show. Honestly, only issue I really have is, again, like they still need to continue to put the placement of the women's matches in a better spot. And I think once they start really getting that downhand, and I think still they might be struggling just because their women's roster is still like missing a lot of key pieces. And I think when they come back, it'll be good.
Yeah, Shauna posts on Instagram and Twitter like all the time. She can't wait to get back. It's just
and then when like Chris Statlander heals up.
Yeah, Chris Statlander, man. Yeah. It was funny.
They're still missing a lot of pieces.
She did like an Instagram live. She's like, ask me anything except when I'm coming back. Because it's like she's nowhere near coming back.
Yeah, her injury was really bad.
One of her legs is significantly smaller than the other. It's just like, this is not coming back time. You talk to her mid 2021. Mid 2021 is when you can actually start asking her that.
Yeah,
because it's probably going to be closer to the end of 2021 before she comes back, because Tony Khan, again, all I hear is that he's excellent to work for. He's not going to let her come back before she is as close to 100% as her body physically is allowed. There was a vice presidential thing Wednesday, vice presidential debate. So AEW's numbers are down a little bit, 753,000. Apparently
because of that fucking fly.
For Jericho's segment, the vice presidential debate drew 50 million people.
The fly drew 50 million people. Let's not joke with ourselves.
I personally said this. I wouldn't want to see a debate between like superhero sidekicks. I wouldn't want to see like Robin debate. Who's another famous superhero sidekick? I don't know, but I wouldn't want to see two sidekicks debate. So I'm like, why would I watch a vice presidential debate? I don't know. I just think most people at this point, a month before, I truly believe this, and I could be wrong. You're decided.
Yeah, and we'll leave that.
No, I'm not. Like I said, I'm not going either way. I try to do my best to keep this show apolitical as possible. I don't want anyone to know which side I lean to. It's just
because God knows we don't want to talk about shit.
I don't. Yeah, I just feel like a month, like November. You know.
If you know, you know.
You know who you're voting for.
Yeah, but anyways, let's real quickly though get into the preview for next week's AEW Dynamite, the 1-year anniversary preview, and then after that, honestly, let's just talk about our favorite moment from the first year of AEW Dynamite. First up, matches that have been announced for next week's show: the Cody versus OCT&T title match, Big Swole versus Hikaru Shida for the women's title match, FTR versus Best Friends for the tag team titles, and Jon Moxley versus Jake Hager for the AEW World title. So all of the titles except for the FTW title will be on the line on the anniversary show.
Yeah, I was going to say, and this is like a non-pay-per-view. This doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And, so I honestly think they could go Lance Archer as champion. I think a lot of people are assuming that Mox is just going to win.
For some reason, it says Jake Hager. Lance Archer is who John Moxley's facing next week. Not Jake.
You know who does the notes? Me. So I literally wrote it down wrong, but memorized it right. That's so
interesting.
Weird.
So apologies for that. It's John Moxley versus Lance Archer, not Jake Hager.
That was on me. That wasn't on Austin. He was just reading the notes. Lance Archer.
I pulled a full Anchorman and just read what was on the teleprompter.
Yeah, January 4th show. January 4th show in New Japan. Mox and Archer wrestled in a Texas Death Match. Mox ended up beating Archer. Now they're just doing a regular wrestling match. I'm going out on a limb. I'm calling Archer.
Honestly, I think if anybody at this point was to end John Moxley's reign, I would think Lance Archer would be a good shout. I'm not sure how long they're going to keep the title on Moxley, but I mean, like, if there's anybody like recently that like is incredibly believable to take the title, Lance Archer I think is a good shout.
I just think they've built him so well. He's 40 plus, so his window to be a believable world champion is, closing. I think you give the big Texas boy to run. I think you could give it back to Mox in November on November 7th. I think you could very well do that. But I think Mox needs to lose this one. I mean, he's a badass champion. I think a nice year run that ends with year run with Kenny or Hangman, I'm down with. So if they don't do it, but if you're asking me, my gut, if Floyd's gut is punching through, I'm saying Archer wins Wednesday.
Yeah, I can lean on that as well. And yeah, I think that'll be the only title that changes hands, unless they do end up going with what we think with Cody being overzealous and actually OC upsets Cody, which if that happens, holy shit.
You know who does it? AEW does very logical booking. So I could see, logically, Cody should lose next week. Orange Cassidy hasn't wrestled in 2 weeks, so he's fresh, and Cody is beat to hell. Logically, OC should win. Lance Archer, Mox has been wrestling. Lance Archer has been off for the last few weeks. Getting healthy, getting pissed. I mean, he could win. So I can see either belt changing hands, but like I said, I don't like to sit on the fence with dumb things. I'm just going to call it. Archer wins, Cody wins. But it's like, they haven't had a heel champion. Well, I guess FTR technically are heels. I don't think
eyes,
they are not heels in my eyes. They are the baby faces of baby faces, but they are heels. But, good old heel world champion. It's amazing. But Mox has had a great run. I think he's done a lot for the title, like a lot for the title. And, he's one of those people that once I heard an interview for him and he told me what he was going for in his character, it was like John McClane. I've heard that, and I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely John McClane vibes. It's just like he's just going to keep coming at you, and he's going to do whatever it takes to win. So they've been getting the Bulldog choke over, so he could end up choking Lance Archer out like that. And there's a lot of ways he could go, but I just think in the end, everybody dies.
Yeah. Now, before we wrap up the show, I think it would be a really good idea, leading into the anniversary show for next week, to talk about our favorite moments in AEW Dynamite's first year. Specifically for myself, I will say I have 3 matches on my list of my favorite Dynamite matches, and they're just the ones that come to my head. First up, Nick Jackson versus Phoenix. Jesus Christ. This was back in November of last year. That match was ridiculous. And also, very much enjoyed the upset of Private Party beating the Young Bucks in the first round of the tag team tournament. Very early on in Dynamite's history, and it was still a really, really great moment. And then one other one I had was Cody versus Darby Allin 2. I mean, I loved their first match, and their second match was just as good, if not better. So, those alone are some of my favorite matches in AEW history. And then, of course, you have, great segments like the debate between Jericho and OC, and anything Cody says in terms of promos, always quality, always great. The the amazing recovery of the Dark Order from when they first showed up in Double or Nothing, and then all of a sudden Brodie Lee, I feel like, legitimizes them, and then John Silver. First off, congrats on getting your first singles win on Dynamite. Second off, John Silver developing into such a great character. Like, there's like too many to name. Like, honestly, Floyd, any that I'm missing that you think are like huge moments?
Okay, of course, I was at the first Dynamite. Posted the line, so that first Cody entrance was like especially memorable to me. What's her name? Rio winning the title at the first Dynamite.
Yeah,
was a very big moment for me in women's wrestling. Kenny versus Pac at Kansas City, the Iron Man match. It was to me, it is the best match in Dynamite history. It's that 30-minute Pac versus Kenny Iron Man match. FTR driving in the truck, rolling in the truck to show up. That was a great moment. Also, I think that's it. And Cody's comeback. I think when you look at it, if we do yearly awards and you look at it, that when the lights hit and he rises from the bottom, I think that will be one of those top 5, top 10 moments of the year.
Yeah, but yeah, that'll wrap it up for this episode of All Things Elite, as we leave you with our favorite moments of the first year of Dynamite off the top of our heads. We want to thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, be sure to download the show and share it with your friends, whether you're listening on Google or Apple Podcasts, or if you're listening on Spotify or anywhere else you get podcasts. We appreciate you. Be sure to leave a rating and a review. Tell us how we're doing, anything you think we should do differently. Also, if you are so appreciative, we would love if you leave a donation through our podcast provider, Red Circle. You don't have to, but we would be so in debt to you if you did such a thing. And again, on Twitter, we are at ATElitePod, at Social Suplex, at SZoomer4, which is myself, and at Floyd Johnson Jr., which is Floyd, on Twitter. And again, nothing else we can do right now except for letting our good buddy Floyd take us home for tonight.
Well, with my last few moments, like I generally do, I am just going to point you to one place. It is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It is near and dear to my heart. I always try to support it as much. I have not had anyone in my family affected by it, but I've had friends and people affected by it. So one thing I will say is just go to shopaew.com, click on the AEW Breast Cancer Awareness shirt, and I believe, what did they say? A portion of profits we donated to the following charities: to Titmice Vodka and Jack's in the Pink. So it's great causes for breast cancer awareness. Make sure you go order your shirt on shopaew.com. I wanted to just put that plug in just because most people probably doesn't even know this shirt exists. I'd just like you to go order one if you can. Last, as always, you're going through life. This is 2020's almost over. Some people's been bad, some people's been good, some people's whatever. Just remember, take care of yourself. Make sure you're looking out, social distancing, all that kind of stuff. Just make sure you're doing what else you can for your mental and physical health. And whether it is home, work, or school, always do your best to be elite.